President of the United States should only take America to war under the most dire circumstances, only when the life and freedom of our country could potentially be at stake. The last thing that the president, any president, should ever do is take our country to war for the benefit of another country. That is where we are. What I'm going to show you in this episode right here is there is recently revealed information, intel that was revealed by the Washington Post that shows that President Trump, and along with a number of other things I'm going to show you in this episode here, to show a very strong case that President Trump has taken the United States to war and now has us in a conflict with Iran that has no clearly defined way out and could get a lot worse for us, that went against intelligence that showed this very outcome would happen and rejected diplomacy that would have had a way out. So now the question is then, why would he do this? And on whose benefit? This idea that there was an imminent threat, there's no truth to that. That's been debunked. We've showed you many times there was no threat, imminent or otherwise, from Iran against the United States. That is complete lies. Not deception, that's lies. We got to call it what it is. And among President Trump's supporters, they've gone down the line, everyone repeating the same lie to reinforce it, to make it sound true. If they say it often enough and with enough enthusiasm, people will start to believe it. It's not working, but that's the idea. No, this is about one nation and really one person. And the United States Armed Forces have been handed over to the person of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's a fact. You cannot like it. You can be angry about it because it just sounds really bad. I don't like it either. It makes me mad too, maybe for different reasons, because already Americans have died because we have handed over our armed forces to the use of another country when ours did not need it. In fact, you can even see this war began, what prompted Trump, after having several times going all the way back to the middle of January, when it looked like things were ready to go. Earlier in February, it looked like things were ready to go, and Trump stopped each time and withdrew the permission to go wisely. But every time he did, there was more and more pressure behind to go again. I warned about this. I said that if he says no to these, that the pressure from Netanyahu and his supporters in the United States would be relentless on him. And that's exactly what happened. And we now know, because Netanyahu himself has said that the initiation came when Netanyahu convinced Trump that they had to go on the 28th because they claimed that their intelligence had found that there was a meeting with Ayatollah that was going to be with several of his top commanders. And they said, this is our chance. We can decapitate him right away. So it appears that Trump said, okay, great, let's go do that. We get a decapitation strike right off the back. It's like Maduro in Venezuela. Bam, boom, in, out, done. Victory parade and all that. And it looks good. It's clean, it's short, it's sharp, it's decisive. That's what he wanted. But of course, we now know that's not the way it worked out. But we also should have known it wasn't going to work that way out, regardless of whether there was intelligence that said you could get the Ayatollah and several key leaders. Because the Washington Post has put out this I guess it was yesterday, an intelligence report warned that large-scale war unlikely to oust Iran's regime. According to the article, a classified report by the National Intelligence Council found that even a large-scale assault on Iran launched by the United States would be unlikely to oust the Islamic Republic's entrenched military and clerical establishment. A sobering assessment as the Trump administration raises the specter of an extended military campaign that officials say has only just begun. So President Trump thought that this would be a quick and easy thing. He listened to Netanyahu. He listened to Netanyahu's supporters in his close inner circle. And it turned out he was wrong. The intelligence assessment, Trump knew on the inside at the highest levels, all the things that we've been telling you on this channel for months, that this is not a war that we can win. Because in order to succeed, you have to destroy the Iranian state. And without a ground force, that's not even theoretically possible. With a ground force, it probably wouldn't be successful and would come at an astronomical cost that we should never do. But now then we find, and you'll see this in just a second, now we are contemplating ground forces. which is by itself insane that it's even on the table. It should not be on the table. But if President Trump knew ahead of time that there was intelligence that said, and here's for very practical reasons, we've laid them out so many times, the people of Iran are not going to turn against their regime for you by means of force. There's a lot of people inside that didn't like Iran. We showed you some of them on our show just yesterday. They don't like it, but they're not going to turn against their own country for the benefit of Israel or for the benefit of the United States. That was always going to be something. There's no reason to think they were going to do that. And to try and compel them by force, by killing many of them and starting to destroy their armed forces, to destroy their oil facilities, to destroy desalination plants that they need to just survive with drinking water, that's not going to do it. That's going to go in the opposite direction, and that is playing out painfully so right now. So Trump knew ahead of time that it was very unlikely to succeed. But he listened to the emotional pleas of Benjamin Netanyahu and his supporters. Well, he also ignored a diplomatic off-ramp because these people were never interested in diplomacy. They were only using that to drag it out, to get the military time to build up its strength to what they felt comfortable with. Remember, one of the primary reasons reported why it didn't happen in January is because Netanyahu said, yeah, we need a little bit more air defense. We need to bring some more stuff up. Some of the U.S. military also said we need more air defense capability spread out in the region. That turned out to be a pointless endeavor because the interception rates are so low, it really wouldn't have mattered. Nevertheless, that apparently was the purpose of the diplomacy, was to give the face that we're trying to reach a negotiated settlement, all the while buying time for the military until it was ready. And we know this because so according to General Kane, the order to go came on Friday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, on the 27th. 3:30 p.m. on Friday the 27th. That's when the order was given. On the 26th, the night before, is when the third round of negotiations between Steve Witkoff and Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister for Iran, had concluded. After that had concluded, which was mediated by the Omani foreign minister, he came on the next day on CBS News in the United States on Friday and said this.
I am confident, and in my assessment of the way the talks are going, I think there is really, I can see that the peace deal is within our reach.
A peace deal?
Yes, is within our reach if we just allow diplomacy the space it needs to get there.
All we need is the space it needs to get there. He went on to say in there, she asked him, she said, okay, well, that's the nuclear stuff that's on the table, because he specified that they were willing to do things at that point, meaning the night before a decision to go had been given by the president. Again, this is open source. It's no conjecture. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff bragged about it and told us precisely what time the final go order came, which was the next day. So the night before, the president of the United States knew, understand this, follow me here. The night before, President Trump knew that there was a national intelligence assessment that said that a large-scale war probably would not succeed. And he also had a diplomatic outcome by his chief negotiator, his friend, Steve Witkoff, that Iran had agreed to stuff they had never agreed to up until that point. Would have been a great win for Trump. Diplomatically, politically, at home, all kinds of ways. Would have prevented us from going to war. 6 Americans would be alive today. But he rejected it, even though he had what he'd been asking for: zero enrichment. The 400 kilograms of 60% enriched material would be taken out of the country or gotten rid of, and they would put on the table long-range missiles and their support for regional allies/proxies. An incredible opportunity was given, golden platter. Trump rejected it. And you have to ask, why? Why would he go against his own intelligence service and say, I know it's not likely to succeed, but I'm going to do it anyway? Why would he go against his own diplomatic service? They achieved a tremendous breakthrough that I honestly didn't think was possible. I did not think that Iran would do that, but yet they did. And then he went against that too. Why? Right here, this is the most important question to ask first. Whose interests are served by still sending American armed forces into full-scale war, which is where we are? Don't fall for this nonsense, this embarrassing, humiliating claim that so many otherwise elite leaders in America are trying to push, that this is not a war. It's not really war. That's pathetic. Everybody with any amount of common sense knows full well it's self-evidently true. Your entire, a third of the Navy, huge portions of the Air Force are there. You are literally destroying a country. You are actually saying that they have an unconditional surrender demand put on them. That is literally the definition of war. So I don't want to hear any more of that crap. Sorry, that's kind of an aside there, but that's just more of the paucity of any kind of morality or willingness to even have normality among our so-called elite. They are thinking that we are all so stupid here in America, all the regular people, that we're going to fall for this, that you're going to talk us out of believing what we see with our own eyes, that we're so stupid, we're going to fall for your rhetoric. Well, polls say that's already not working, and it's only going to continue to go that direction because by President Trump going against sound military advice, by President Trump going against diplomatic opportunities, now then it's playing out exactly as that NIC report said, and as we've been telling you here on this channel it would before. That now then all of a sudden you can't defeat them. They're not only not giving up, you have solidified their strength around their government. And now then their back is as steel as it can be. They're not going to give in. And they actually have a plan. They actually have a plan to go forward, something that has a chance to succeed. They can't defeat us militarily, but they can defeat us politically and intellectually by just not losing. All they have to do is just drag that out because they know that our resources are limited in the key things that we have. So when you hear Secretary Hegseth or Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Kane say, oh, we've got all kinds of weapons, an unlimited amount. We can have a forever war, Trump weirdly said. I don't know why he would want to brag about something that he campaigned against and that his followers hate. But anyway, he did. But it's wrong. There are some categories of weapons. We do have a whole bunch of stuff. But of the kind that has any chance to succeed and to defend us, we are woefully short. For example, we right now have lost about half of our THAAD. That's a high altitude radars. The best stuff that we have that can get the really high altitude stuff. Half of them are gone. We only had 8 worldwide. These interceptor missiles are $12 million a pop, and we don't have very many of them, and we've lost half of our global radars. So that is, without the radars, the things are worthless. They're just paperweights. You can't fire them without that. So that by itself tells you there's a real problem. Not only that, now we have said, hey, you know what? We also are sending another aircraft carrier, the George W. Bush. So we're going to send a third aircraft carrier. Obviously, if we were in great shape, we would not be sending an aircraft carrier there. We wouldn't need to. Well, now as bad as that is, now then they're also realizing just having more air power is not going to do it because now it's just self-evident that no matter how much more power you bring to bear, you're still going to just blow a bunch of stuff up on the surface, especially. But this is a country that's massive inside. It's as big as a portion of Europe, 4 times bigger than Iraq. You can't just bomb it into the Stone Age. We don't have enough missiles and bombs of all kinds to do that. And since you've set the unconditional surrender for the country, the only thing left is to somehow compel them that what we're doing right now is not working before we start running out of missiles. There's also a separate reporting that our interceptor missile inventory itself is also getting dangerously low. Meanwhile, the Iranian side appears to have stockpiled for months, and they have the ability to fire from portals just out of the sand. They have the ability to still have mobile launchers come out of underground bunkers. We've blown up a lot of the surfaces, but now there's evidence that the Iranian side has, shock of all shocks, figured out how to undo all the damage and to move the rubble away and still use it. We have now some satellite imagery that shows that they've done that. What a shock. But that's what they do because they have prepared for this. They're mentally prepared. They're physically prepared. So they can drag this out for a long time. All they have to do, again, is survive and to have a sustained rate of fire so that they keep on firing at some constant rate, both missiles and with drones. And they know that we're running low on all these things because they thought this through ahead of time, and they're prepared to execute. And so far, their campaign plan is going according to plan. The much weaker military side is actually succeeding, whereas ours is now we're going, oh, snap. And it's getting worse. Because last night, President Trump was on Air Force One and was asked a really important question that should have been an automatic no. Instead, he kept the door open.
What are the circumstances where you'd send in ground troops? How are you thinking about that?
I don't even want to talk about it now. I mean, that's, I don't think it's an appropriate question. You know, I'm not going to answer it. Could there be? Possibly, for a very good reason. Have to be very good reason. And I would say if we ever did that, they would be so decimated that they wouldn't be able to fight at the ground level.
Well, is that what you'd say? Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you know, if there's a good reason, we'll send it in there. Listen, let me just categorically tell you, there is no military solution that has anything to do with ground forces. There is no chance in God's earth that you're going to muster an invasion army that's going to go into a country. I'd hate to be redundant, but it is important to point this out. That's 4 times bigger than Iraq, which we've invaded twice, once with 500,000 troops, once with 300,000 troops, that had a very narrow, limited objective and a narrow path over good terrain, easily to maneuver against an enemy that had no air defense and no viable army at all. Against now, you want to go into a country 4 times bigger with terrain that, especially the way the mountains are, where they're kind of going across like this, and you would have to almost go directly over them. So either go into very narrowly defined channels or over the mountains, of course, and you're not going to be able to do that with an army. I mean, you would be wiped out. Wiped out. It would be our Waterloo if we even tried that. I don't think we could even muster the resources. We don't have an army. I mean, you would have to have several of our NATO allies would have to say, yes, we're going to give you all of our deployable forces, because we don't have enough. Our entire U.S. Army and Air Force is not sufficient. You would have to mobilize the entire National Guard, all of the maneuver forces, and bring them in, and all of that still wouldn't be enough. And then, of course, you would put all of our forces in one place, and we would be defenseless everywhere else in the world. Do you understand what I'm saying here? There is no path here, and the fact that he's even contemplating this is alarming to the highest degree. But that shows you that he's stuck, because without a ground force, even in the conceptual phase, what you're doing in the air alone is not going to work. What a shock. It's not hard to figure out. Yet somehow he ignored it. And I don't really understand why he did that, except that's part of the point here. That's what we have to look at here. That's the whole point of what we're talking about now. Why? Why would you get yourself into a situation like this? Why would you ignore sound military advice, sound intelligence, diplomatic off-ramp, golden platter? Why would you eschew all of that and go down a path that had very little chance of success? Only an absolute luck would have had any guess, and we've clearly passed that point. It didn't happen. And now then all of the things that were in this intelligence assessment are coming to pass. So now you know that's not going to work. Air power is not going to work. Ground power is not going to work. Well, then let's see, what was the reason for this? Now, I told you a minute ago that Netanyahu went out and said, hey, there was the only reason we did this is because we saw the Ayatollah was going to be in a meeting in a bunker on the 28th of February, and this is our chance. We got to go get him right now, because we may lose a chance and we can get a decapitation. So he filled Trump's head with all these glories that, yeah, we can do it. Didn't make any sense, but he thought, yeah, let's gamble. Let's roll the dice. This also validates what I've been telling you. My assessment is that we went in there on this hope that we would get a regime collapse because of a decapitation strike. That was always a bad play, but it looked like we gambled everything on that. Well, it didn't work. So Netanyahu told Trump, according to Netanyahu in public, no conjecture here, he says, yes, this is the case. We need to go now, Mr. President. We need to go right now. And Trump followed through on the behalf of Benjamin Netanyahu. Not because an American general said, not because of General Kane, the chairman, not because of General Cooper, the commander of CENTCOM. No, not because of any of that, not even because of Hegseth, because what Netanyahu told him, according to Netanyahu. Well, today, Benjamin Netanyahu has also gone out. Let's see if I can find it. I believe it's right here. Yes. So this is today. This is today. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to sit here and he's going to just lather Trump up and talk about what a great guy he is and what great alliances we have.
Donald Trump understood long ago the magnitude of the danger to the United States and the entire world. I will tell you that I met him in Florida months ago before he was elected to his second term. The first thing he said to me was, "Bibi, we must at all costs prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons." I would like to thank my friend, President Trump, for the historic leadership he is demonstrating, for the courageous friendship between us and the tighter-than-ever alliance between the United States and Israel, which we both led in Operation Rising Lion.
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase here. Here you have Benjamin Netanyahu lathering up Trump, saying he's our greatest ally. This is what Trump knows. But he also is claiming, Trump told me, even before he was elected, Bibi, we have got to go get those darn Iranians. We must do whatever it takes at all cost, to use his words. He's claiming that Trump said we have to go at all costs before the election. Understand that, before he was inaugurated, right? That's what he said. What did Trump say before the inauguration? What did Trump say during the campaign? It was the opposite. No more dumb wars. We're not going to get into wars. We're going to get rid of the ones we have. I'm a peace president. That's what he ran on. But now Benjamin Netanyahu is claiming today that no, Trump told me he was actually after a war. He had to do it at all costs to include a full-on war here. Now, there's no truth to that. Again, we're not stupid. And it's time for us to open our eyes. And I'm talking about people who are big-time supporters of Israel, who are lifelong supporters of Israel. We were all raised in America that Israel was our best friend and our ally in the entire Middle East. They were an island of stability in a sea of chaos. That's kind of how it was always portrayed. We cut our teeth on that. And I knew many Jewish people. I knew many Israelis over the years. Wonderful people. So there's no reason for to ever question any of that. Except you have the person of Benjamin Netanyahu who wants to destroy, and is, and probably already past tense has, destroyed this tremendous goodwill that was throughout the United States. There has historically been all kinds of problems with anti-Semitism. Obviously, the Holocaust during World War II and everything that followed along with that. There has been great, it had been great animosity against the Jewish people, but it had been built up to a tremendous support for Israel. Now, beyond the scope of this show today, that obviously had some very negative ramifications for the Palestinian people who were abused for decades. We'll talk about that in another episode. But for right here, the point being that there was this great goodwill between the United States and Iran. It is now ruined because now Netanyahu has taken his own country and led it in a direction that's maniacal and destructive of the entire Palestinian population in both Gaza and the West Bank. And this precedes 10/7, by the way. History didn't start on that day. The death and destruction that he had been putting on Palestinian people across the board in those territories is preceded by decades of this, and even in the summer before, again, for another time. But the bottom line is Benjamin Netanyahu didn't care about that. He didn't care about President Trump. He saw in Trump somebody he could manipulate. He could manipulate Biden to a degree. And Biden constantly talked about he was the most pro-Israeli president we'd ever have, whatever. He's bending over backwards to do that, I think mainly to get money. But Biden had some red lines. And he's not going to go to war for Israel. And apparently he made that clear. And they had some shouting matches, according to some reports. But bottom line is he didn't take us into. So he had a roadblock there. But with President Trump, because he got profound amounts of money from Israeli sources in the last election, hundreds of millions of dollars. It was decisive. And he had a lot during the first campaign as well, 2016. And in Trump, he found somebody that was more malleable, somebody that could be manipulated. And you saw it on display right there in that last clip from earlier today, to where he's just bragging, oh, this great leadership and a great friend, whatever. He's patting him on the back because he knows how to butter up Trump. He knows what works. And to show you how it works, to show you how successful it was, even before this one here, this is President Trump in just this past December talking to a Jewish group at the event of Hanukkah. And look how much fealty he gives even then to the Israelis.
As President of the United States, I will always support Jewish Americans, and I will always be a friend and a champion to the Jewish people. I have been. And I will say, you know, if you go back 10, 12, 15 years ago at the most, the strongest lobby in Washington was the Jewish lobby. It was Israel. That's no longer true. You have to be very careful. You have a Congress in particular, which is becoming anti-Semitic. You have AOC +3. You have those people, Ilhan Omar, she hates Jewish people. And you have to be very careful because there's been a big change.
See, he is President Trump there is taking preemptive action and just saying anyone who says anything against the policies of Israel equals anti-Semitism. It's a gross mischaracterization of reality, but that's been going on for a long time. That also happened a lot during the Biden administration. Trump just continued it on. And in this administration, he's pushing it even further. But there's one other thing I want to show you here, too. It's not just members of Congress. It's not just giving money to members of Congress or to their lobbying them or to give them campaign funds in the hundreds of millions of dollars each cycle. It's not even just that. Netanyahu came to the United States of America on our soil and talked to our people, our own citizens, and is manipulating them to carry his water here across the board, even into the social media rounds. Here he is last September in New York City talking to a group of Americans and telling them how to carry his water for his benefit in our country.
I guess I'm curious about what's another game plan if we lose evangelical support for the state of Israel? What's our backup plan to be strong?
Okay, we have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. Number one.
See, so he's right there instructing them. Here's what you need to do to put forth our ideas. Because just like with President Trump trying to say members of Congress that we're not going to broker any kind of ideas that are against the policies of Benjamin Netanyahu, and we're going to label them anti-Semitism, so nobody can complain. And the same thing here, now on an individual level, on an influencer level. He's saying, y'all need to just carry our way here. Demonize anybody we don't like. We have to fight back. His words, again, you just saw them. We have to fight back. So anybody who's saying anything we don't like, and of course, that was a lot of, at the time, was the Palestinian issue and all the people that they were slaughtering in the Gaza Strip. So many people, tens of thousands of innocent civilians have been killed. The entire Gaza Strip being wiped almost from the face of the earth, being turned into a moonscape. That's what he was doing back then to try and make it so unlivable that other countries, of course, Netanyahu had been trying to get them out for a long time, but that got a lot of pushback. A lot of people in the world at that time were saying, we're going to countries I'm talking about, we're saying we're going to recognize a Palestinian state in order to put pressure on Netanyahu to stop killing the Palestinians. And he went to a bit of a ceasefire after that. But you see, he was trying, in the context of that comment there, to try and get social media to undercut all of those. And so he did just enough to get all these world leaders to stop talking about it. Meanwhile, continued to action on the ground because Netanyahu is worried about Netanyahu and what he wants. He has this lust to drive all the Palestinians out of Gaza, all the Palestinians out of the West Bank. Now, I think we've shown you in the last couple of days, other Israeli leaders, even the opposition, is wanting to push many of the Lebanese out of the southern part of their country. They've already carved out part of Syria. And, you know, this whole issue of a greater Israel is not fact. It's not fiction at all. It's not accusations. It is bragged on by the Israeli folks themselves. And you saw it was big news here where you had Ambassador Huckabee, when pressed by Tucker Carlson in an interview, said, yeah, why not go from not just the river to the sea, but all of the historical biblical definition of what is the country of Israel, what is the nation of Israel, which include parts of Jordan, I think all of Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, etc., many countries in the region. And what did Huckabee says? Wouldn't hurt my feelings any if it happened. Sure, why not? Made a lot of the Arab regimes very unhappy. But you see, we are literally just throwing to the wind all American interests in order to get behind what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. Americans are already dead. Tens of thousands have been forced out of the Middle East of Americans I'm talking about, had to flee the region. Our allies are taking lots of big hits in the region. And now then, it's even causing a rift among historically our best ally that there was, Great Britain. Even that, now then, not only is he subordinating American interest in our own country and using our armed forces for the personal benefit of Benjamin Netanyahu, now we're also throwing Britain under the bus. This is a Truth Social from Trump. Let's see, as last night I saw the United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally given serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's okay, Prime Minister Starmer. We don't need them any longer, but we will remember we don't need people to join wars after they're already won. So if you hadn't heard, Starmer apparently was considering sending some aircraft carriers. I only saw one, maybe there were 2. The president said, I don't need them. I don't want those. So he embarrassed and humiliated our ally, who was hesitant to get in because he said, your war is illegal. Remember, originally, he wouldn't even let the United States use RAF bases to launch this. So that made Trump unhappy. Later on, he pulled that back. And now he's saying, because Starmer also is a weak leader, if we're being honest. And so now he's trying to get himself back into the good graces of Trump and say he's going to offer more combat power, which is, I think, foolish for the British people. They should not get involved with this. But nevertheless, he tried to give in. But now you see Trump's like saying, I don't want that. So he's just humiliating our best actual ally. And so he's now subordinating even our European allies on the behalf of Netanyahu. And this is the foolishest even of all, because you're going to need that combat power. We already are running low on everything, and you're going to say no to somebody who's going to bring it in? I mean, that just shows you how President Trump has just got these kind of myopic blinders on that says, I'm sacrificing everything. Americans, American interests, intelligence assessment. I'm going to ignore our intelligence. I'm going to ignore our diplomatic corps. I'm going to ignore our best allies in Europe. Everything on the table to sacrifice for one man. Listen, folks, again, I know a lot of people don't like this and it makes some people angry. I'm just begging you, stop and look at the physical evidence that I'm providing here. How many more Americans need to die for this? How many more of our allies need to suffer because of a war that should never have been started? And I don't think that we can win it on any terms that make any sense for us. I mean, Trump is probably going to end up having to do some verbal gymnastics and just claim some victory here to get out, because his options are going to be to do that as long as the Iranian side stays with its backbone and continues on with its campaign plan of just existing and keeping some kind of constant fire going on. So that we keep having to use interceptor missiles and keep having to use offensive missiles and just blowing stuff up all over the country. If they keep doing that, then Trump is going to be having one of 2 main choices. Either use verbal gymnastics to claim success and, well, we've destroyed enough and this and that and the other, so we're going to just claim victory and, we'll come back again if they need to. I think that's probably the most likely course at this point. I don't know when that would come. Or the alternative is that he could double down and say we're going to go in somehow on the ground, even though what country is going to put ground forces involved with that that are just going to die for no reason? It would be foolish to do. I doubt that they're going to do that. But that is his 2 general options, because of the third option is not, well, we'll just keep bombing until we win, as long as Iran doesn't capitulate and just give in. And I see no evidence historically or otherwise that they would do that. So the most likely is that you're going to be forced to either escalate up or do verbal gymnastics to get out. Obviously, I vote for the verbal gymnastics. I will cheer it on because it's going to stop the war. I just hope that comes sooner rather than later, because every day results in more pointless deaths in Iran, more chaos for the region, more harm for our allies, and potentially more deaths for American troops. It's a terrible situation. We need to understand the reality of it. We're going to talk X's and O's, and we're going to talk the process of the war later on today, and certainly we're going to keep track of all this before. But you need to understand the core of how this war started and whose interest it's being fought for. Very, very important. Thanks, folks. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.